Hey, Billy, you know what's awesome?
What's that?
Going to the video store.
Dude, that guitar thing drove me nuts. That guitar because I had my amp completely tweaked. Like it sounded amazing. But every time I record it, it sounded like crap. And I'd move the microphone like move the microphone's literally been on every surface, every space, the amp's angled different ways. And finally got it, and it was just like, oh my god, because I was just like chasing a dragon right there. I was like, so I was like, man, I can play two chords, I just can't record them. So, but got it done, and
Awesome.
so let's go to the video store.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of those things when we found out that Stuart Gordon passed away, that you know a lot of our old just standby guys are leaving us, and a lot of them are leaving way too soon. I mean, to be fair, that a lot of them have had some pretty long and storied lives and careers, but just in the last couple of years, we lost Wes Craven and Toby Hooper and
George Romero.
George Romero, and it's just seems to keep going on and on. And Stuart Gordon, while he's not as well known as some of those others, his impact, especially on probably new filmmakers, is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with like the Lovecraft Renaissance that's kind of going on now, where everybody's real big into Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
He was there in '85 doing it. So.
Right. And that's the thing, is you really don't have even the resurgence now without that body of work that Stuart Gordon was putting together. I mean, these are, I think we've said it before when we were talking, these are staple flicks that any horror fan, you should have at least 3 or 4 of his movies in your collections.
Yes. And if not that, then Shudder right now for the quarantine is giving away a month free. So if you're not familiar with Shudder, and we don't have anything to do with Shudder, but it's kind of like the horror movie Netflix. And after we talked about Stuart Gordon, I was like, okay, well, I want to at least go back and watch Reanimator. Yeah. Maybe if I can find another one. And looking for Reanimator, it was on Shudder, and Shudder was the first thing that I've seen in forever that was kind of akin to that old video store experience, because they've got all of the cool artwork up.
Yeah.
It's all stacked thumbnail tiles across the screen. So, you see those old video store stalwarts that
yeah
were just so fascinating when you were a kid. So anyway,
and you're right, because talking about even Stuart Gordon here, I can clearly remember picking up Reanimator just because of the artwork on the VHS box. And
yes.
I mean, come on, you've got him standing there with the syringe and the glowing, serum or whatever it is, and you've got the head on the table, in the petri dish or the pan or whatever it is. I mean, hands down, I had to rent this movie, and this is the movie that I remember after I watched Reanimator for the first time, I instantly ejected it, went to my neighbor's house, and said, "You have got to watch this now."
Dude, I remember, several buddies of mine, this was in the 90s. So like, we're talking about the video store and a lot of the notable a lot of the tapes. But Reanimator came out in '85. So it would have been hitting video stores around '86. So I was like 10 years old. I wasn't allowed to watch this stuff. So, when I was that age, my horror was whatever my parents happened to be watching that they didn't want to send me to my room about, before it finally started getting too rough and they'd send me to my room.
Yeah.
But at 10 years old, I was not watching Reanimator, right? I know you're a couple years older, so you were at the same time, you were probably just that perfect age.
16,
like,
man, straight up 16 years old. Fresh driver's license and a copy of Reanimator. I mean,
hell, So yeah, but the thing of it was when I got older. So this would have been probably early '90s. You know, early to mid high school. Freshman, sophomore high school. Me and some buddies, we went on this kind of horror movie summer where we just like all of those movies that we hadn't seen, we just went and got them. So we like went through all the Fridays, all the Halloweens, all of the nightmares, all of the everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of my a lot of my having seen horror movies came from that summer. Several of them I've seen multiple times since. Others not so much. And Reanimator was one of those, but it kind of was lumped in there with all the Evil Deads. Army of Darkness came out like right around that time, and so I kind of had, for Reanimator itself, I kind of had a blotchy memory. And then watching it again the other night, I was like, I cannot believe that this got muddled in with all this other, because this is crazy.
It's so over the top, man. It's the effects are still pretty fascinating, but it is so outrageous, man. I mean, Evil Dead 2 and Reanimator was such a huge influence on me as a horror fan because of the dark humor in it and just the over-the-top craziness of it all.
Well, and that's the thing with Reanimator is it doesn't get, nothing ever gets any better. It just continually just amps up and amps up and amps up and just like up and up and up. And you have little breaks where they're talking about like, well, that was a bad idea. We shouldn't have done that. And they're like, well, let's do it again.
Exactly.
And,
it's like the precursor to well, I didn't forget the name of it. But yeah, I mean, it's like, well, yeah, it didn't work last time. Maybe I didn't give him enough.
Of course he's dead. That dosage was too large.
Let's give him some more.
My experience.
I do have a backup plan. Overdose.
Yeah, I'll and then I'm sitting there watching it, being like, okay, so the whole time he's talking about how it's the brain stem, like that's the source of everything. And so he chops off the dude's head, and then for whatever reason he injects just the body with some too.
Yeah.
Like here, let's just see what happens with this dude whose head I just chopped off with a shovel in my basement. Like, what could possibly go wrong if this works? I mean, it's not like this was just some random dude. This is like a guy who was like obviously an enemy.
Yeah. Amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Poor Barbara Crampton, man. She
yeah.
Like she knows, like in every scene she's like, I have a bad feeling about this the whole time. Like the whole, like from the very beginning she's like, something bad is gonna happen, and like everything bad happens to her.
And what's amazing is you really get pulled in with this cast too, man. I mean, the cast of Reanimator is great. It really makes it work. I mean, Jeffrey Combs is a force on his own, but with Bruce Abbott, Barbara Crampton, I mean, you can't help but feel for these people as you're going through this trip and just how crazy, Herbert West is. It's just one of those lightning in the bottles, man. It's a perfect, crazy, over the top movie.
Yeah, well, and then that security guard at the morgue, who they post they post that guy there to keep Herbert out of there. And then all the crap goes, and he's like looking in there and watching all the zombies go crazy, and he's just like, I quit. He just leaves.
Well, when Barbara Crampton's dad squishes that head, then he slings it out in the hall, and it splatters on the wall right above the security guard's head, and he's like,
yeah,
he's gone.
He's like, I'm out. I quit. It was so cool. It's just like, there's certain things you see and you're just like, nope. He's the only character that has any sense at all, really.
Right. And again, if you follow that up and go right into From Beyond, man, the effects in From Beyond are still just amazing. And what a warped movie, man.
I didn't have a chance to rewatch that. I remember it being bizarre. But that was the one thing about Reanimator was too, was just how bloody it really was.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they did not spare any expense on blood. Like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's all seeping out of mouths and noses and ears. Like Stuart Gordon was not squeamish about blood, or I guess he wasn't worried about violence ratings for his movies or something. Because, like I said, I was looking for sound effects so that whenever we're done here, I can cut in, and all I could find really was Herbert West introducing himself, and then a whole lot of screaming.
I mean, like you're saying from the very beginning, because the guy comes out and his eyeballs blow out of his head.
Yeah.
My God.
You killed him. Nope, I gave him life. It's like, okay, what are we in for here?
Yeah, it was like this guy obviously he's a medical student. He's not going to pass.
Yeah. and again, in From Beyond, I mean, him carrying over the character, a different character, but it's still, Jeffrey Combs playing Jeffrey Combs, and the fact that, it's about the effects of the pineal gland and being able to see into another dimension. And again, I mean, you need to revisit that one, man, because those effects are still just absolutely amazing. And the fact of Jeffrey Combs, because he, does the pineal gland thing and it pokes out of his forehead, and his head, all of his hair gets pulled off his body by some kind of weird sandworm that's in the basement of this house. And then he goes up and sucks Gordon Stewart's wife eyeball out of her head. I mean, it's just like
more and more and more. Like, I remember some of those scenes. I just didn't get a chance to watch it recently in the last couple of days. But
trust me, it gives Reanimator a run for its money, man. It's really up there.
Well, dude, I've got that Shudder subscription, so I'm going to be on it if I can manage. It's been a strange couple of days here. I've got my one of my little ones is a little bit sick, and well, she's not ill. She's had a little cold, but so where our TV hangs, right directly behind it is the doorway to the hallway, and then her bedroom, like all the bedrooms of the house are directly. So we had a problem when she was little in that she would come in behind us, like we're facing this way looking at the TV. She would come in behind us and sneak watch shows with we didn't know that she was there. So she saw some stuff she shouldn't have seen when she was like 4 years old, like monsters and stuff. We were watching The Walking Dead, and so I'm sitting there watching Reanimator, and it was the table scene with Barbara Crampton, and that door slides open because we've got a little pocket door. That door slides open. I couldn't hit the remote fast enough. I'm just like, oh my God, and like turn off the TV and like what? And she's like, what's all that noise? And I was like, you just get back in bed because you have you don't even need to be in the same room with this movie, right?
I'm very disappointed in you. You steal the secret of life and death, and here you are trysting with the bubble-headed co-ed. You're not even a second-rate scientist.
Oh, man.
And but
I mean,
so yeah, so I haven't.
Other flicks too, man. I mean, you've got Dolls, which is kind of a cult classic now. Which
I remember Dolls quite vividly. Like that's one of those ones that I always think of as kind of a whenever Toy Story came out, like the original Toy Story, I was like, oh, this is kind of like a good guy's version of Dolls. So the way my mind works is comparing everything through that horror lens.
Right.
But,
and I really like Stuart's version of The Pit and the Pendulum as well. I thought that was very well done too. So yeah, man, I like a lot of Stuart Gordon stuff. It's kind of a tragedy, man. But you know what? We're bound to lose them, man. We're no spring chickens, so we're getting up there too. So, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that I'm so afraid we're going to hear about Argento falling out or. Because
I just hope everybody.
He hasn't looked healthy in 30 years,
No, and then you got Clive Barker, who's had health problems,
battling everything. John Carpenter.
So, Well, we were talking about the video store, and this is one of those things, sit back kids, because there are no more video stores,
Yeah.
and everything is on demand, and but that's not how it used to be. Like, it used to be this place that you would go, and sometimes they smelled like popcorn, and sometimes they didn't, but you'd go up there, and new releases, maybe it was another Stuart Gordon movie, maybe a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But like, you'd go up on a Friday night and look for movies, and if you were a teenager, you had your buddies with you, and you'd go to the horror aisle. And if you were 10-year-old me, that's where you spent your time, was the horror aisle, because those movies you couldn't watch, and movies that you would regret having watched at that age anyway. It would have just scared the bejesus out of you for having done it. But the VHS cases all had a story behind them.
Yeah.
And they were absolutely just hypnotic. Like, I remember staring at the backs of certain video cases and just being like, what is this about? Right. And probably the one, for me anyway, that's probably, because I was like, okay, so there's a lot of these. I made just a whole big list, but for me, the one, because it would have been right at my age, was Friday the 13th, Part 5. Yeah. So, and the reason Friday Part 5 was because, first of all, it had that big glowing hockey mask on the front.
Right.
It kind of catches your eye. And it was also just came out, so it was a new release, right? So they had posters up in the store. But when you turn it around, there's a little tiny picture of, was it Junior?
Yeah.
On the motorcycle.
Yeah.
And the machete's halfway through his neck. Like, it's already halfway through. It like hasn't cut the head off completely, but it's on its way through. Just a total action shot. Yeah. And I used to stare at that and just think, like, I wonder what it looks like in there. You know what I mean? like Lydia Dietz and Beetlejuice. Like, are all you bloody guts and pus under there? Like, it was like, so that was one. But man, yeah, you stand there in the horror section and stare at videos and wonder what's going on in here.
You would stand there longer, picking up boxes and flipping them over and reading. You would spend more time picking out one than you would spend the time actually watching the movie that you picked.
Absolutely. Well, and that was another one, because I was always, even at that age, I was always a big fan of rock and roll, and at that, in my youth, we were much more small town Southern Baptist Church, members, and the Satanic Panic was a big deal.
Oh, so, yeah.
Like, all that devil music, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, then what was to land right in the middle of the video store was Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat, man.
And old Sammy Kerr, and just that demonic looking, hell-spawn dude with that font, that guitar, just like everything's on fire, and it's just like, oh man, what is happening here?
Perfection.
Like, don't really have to see the movie to get 100% what the movie's about by looking at that cover. Like, that to me was just like, and it wasn't too long after that like, because I know that like Motley Crue and other bands were really, they were happening at that time, but I was still a little young to be in the scene. But it was only a couple years later that Guns N' Roses really broke, and I got real like I really don't care. I don't care. It's like, if the devil were to call me up right now and say, hey, you want to switch places with Slash? I'd be like, yes. Where do I sign?
Yeah, when Trick or Treat came out, man, that was my time period. I was that age. I was, I so identified with Ragman, Skippy. That was my movie. And I just mentioned this earlier on somebody was showing that, talking about the soundtrack. It's my favorite soundtrack ever. I have went through so many copies of that cassette when I was a kid. I mean, I know I went through 3 cassettes for sure. And of course now, with digital, it never deteriorates. So yeah, man, it was perfection for me. I actually saw that in the theater. So, Yeah, I've got several different copies of it here. I can't say that they're all legal, but
That's one that's kind of hard to find. But I think I listened to your show about
House
it,
of
talking
Wax,
about how it was like wrapped up in legal problems. So
Yeah.
it's hard to find legal copies of it, or even just streaming or available.
And it's all about the
So-
band. You know, the band won't release them the rights to use the music in a movie that they already had the rights to use it in. So it's kind of a weird situation. But, you know, hey, more power to you, Fastway, even though you're not a band anymore. And everybody that started the band are pretty much all dead. So
Wow.
it's a weird, weird situation.
Yeah.
So a big one for me is I didn't get to see Texas Chainsaw till much later on. But in the early days of video, where you had the boxes setting up, that media version of Texas Chainsaw, where it was him, it was like an artist-drawn picture of him standing, and you had the girl's eyes behind him. That picture haunted me in my youth because the name, for one thing, it was already infamous, right? And then you take this picture, and it's just so ingrained in my head. That and the Phantasm poster, which was the cover of the box for it back in the day. So I got a little story for that. Some girls that lived next to me decided they were going to have a sleepover. And I was good friends with the girl, and she said, we want you to go and pick us out some scary movies because you tend to know more than we do. I got them Phantasm and Dr. Butcher, M.D.
Oh, no.
But I totally picked Phantasm because I wanted to see it because I'd always been looking at this box, you know, and was just blown away by it. And, of course, Phantasm is absolutely one of my favorite movies ever. And but those are totally because of the box. I always think of the
box. The box is sold movies.
That's what did it.
It sold rentals for
That's what did it.
sure.
Yeah. So I think of Company of Wolves. Man, when I saw that on the cover, instant, I grabbed it. I was going to watch it because that's where the
Company of Wolves, is that the one where the wolf is sticking its nose out of the dude's mouth?
Yeah.
That's
And
epic.
I was kind of disappointed in the movie overall back then because, hello, I'm the Reanimator guy, right? I want the over-the-top stuff. But in hindsight, it's a very, very well-made movie.
See, I think I saw the movie one time for the same reason. But was not very memorable. For me, it's always going to be American Werewolf in London, which is strange, because American Werewolf in London does not have a very great cover. It's just two dudes looking over their shoulder, and there's some that the covers really the movie inside really delivered, and others not so much.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like Chud looked awesome. Chud sucked. You know,
what about Chud 2, Bud the Chud?
Well, right. But like the Evil Dead 2, that was one that always got me because of the eyes inside the skull.
Yeah.
Right? Like skulls aren't supposed to have eyes. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I don't remember going to the video store. I always remember seeing the cover for Evil Dead 2, but not for the first one, right? So it's like, okay, well, I can't watch the second one without seeing the first one, right? Saw the first one at a friend's house. He had a copy that he recorded off of HBO or something. And,
right.
Like, that was the first time I saw Evil Dead. And I'm like, okay, and I saw Evil Dead 2. And then it's like the reaction everybody gets, like, I've seen this before.
Right.
It's just what, dude, did you recorded it? We were watching Evil Dead 2, not Evil Dead 1, like the same movie.
So have I told you my Evil Dead 2 story or Evil Dead story on that?
Maybe. I've listened to a lot of your shows, but specifically telling me, I don't know, maybe.
So the copy that we had of Evil Dead 2 was on a blank cassette. Somebody recorded it. I didn't know what it was. It cut the beginning off of it, so you don't see what the title of it is. And I just found the tape. I'm watching it, and it starts right when they come out of the tunnel in the car. So they're going to the cabin. And it's Evil Dead 2, man. I mean, it's the same situation with Reanimator. I took it to a friend's house for a sleepover and said, we're watching this movie tonight. I don't know what it is, but it's insane. And we watched that thing 3 times over the weekend. And I don't know, probably 4 years later, pay-per-view It was a big thing, right, on satellite, and
Right.
they show Evil Dead. I start watching it, and I'm like, holy crap, this is the same dude that was in that crazy movie that I saw. And I still didn't know it was Evil Dead 2. Even though I had seen the box, but I never flipped it over and saw the back to realize this is...
Right.
And so it took me a long time to figure out that Evil Dead 2 was Evil Dead 2. I'd just seen this crazy, whacked out movie where the dude fights his hand, you know.
Right. Well, and that was the thing, because Scott and I, and it's been since we did the Evil Dead series, it's been a year and a half, 2 years, but we did Fresh Eyes, and the rules of Fresh Eyes were you have to watch the movie like you've never seen it before. So get rid of all of your fan love and just watch it and report on it. Like what were your impressions? Like did it hold up? Was it scary? Is it really worth all of the love that it gets? And so, like, you know, Evil Dead, the first one, was a true horror movie.
Yeah.
Like it had a few little side cracks, but for the most part, it was a serious horror movie.
Right.
Evil Dead 2 was the same movie with a whole bunch of jokes inserted, but and then Army of Darkness, they just completely took the top off and let all the crazy out. I mean, there's just no there's just like it makes perfect sense, but it's just like
So I saw that one in the theater, and it seemed like the whole movie went by in like 20 minutes. It seemed like it just went so fast, and I was just going, "What the heck is going on here?"
Yeah, it's just slapstick and funny and crazy, and it's just. But yeah, that Evil Dead 2, man. That if you never saw any of the movies, that cover for Evil Dead 2, where it's just the skull with the eyeballs, is so memorable. You just you can't you don't know what's behind that. That could be the greatest movie ever or the worst movie ever.
Yep.
It's one of the greatest, but you know what I mean. It's like, and then you get Basket Case.
Oh yeah.
Like what that. So yeah, I mean the designers of these movies just really. The boxes, and even into the mainstream stuff. You look at like the paintings for Indiana Jones and the Goonies and all of that stuff. Even though like the epic Star Wars posters and stuff, like video was a big deal, which is weird because it's such a bigger deal now. But they just kind of show up a little. On the screen. You
kind of started seeing that deteriorate in the 90s because it became every cover was 4 or 5 people, profile pictures shaped in a V. It seemed like everything. It didn't matter what the movie was. So the creativeness of the covers just kind of died. And even now, it's like you just see a trend and everybody's just doing the same thing. In the 80s, you got such a variety because people were trying to create artwork to make you pick that box up.
Yes, and they succeeded.
Yes,
because the truth of the matter is, I mean, you can debate this all the way down the line, but like if you take a series like Scott gave us the stats, like Friday the 13th is like the 7th highest money making franchise. Period.
Yeah.
So. You've got Star Wars, and you've got, Friday the 13th is like number 7, and it's like worth a couple $1 billion.
Wow.
And if you watch those movies, they're not very well made.
No.
They're obviously not well acted, whatever. But the thing is, what really drove those movies was word of mouth, sleepovers, probably dares.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, let's watch this scary movie. Are you scared? Like, I'm not scared.
The body count,
and
man.
the boxes.
Yeah, the body count as well, because everything else you had 2 or 3 people getting killed. This thing you were getting up into teens of people getting killed.
So and again, it's just like the Friday movies are one that's like it's an easy benchmark for horror because they're so popular because it's everybody knows. But there's none of those.
Right.
The movies, the cinematography, the special effects, none of them are like notable for anything other than the fact that all shoved together, they're awesome. You know what I mean?
And like you said, if you mention any one of those movies, the poster art is automatically in your head. You
Yes.
can see it. You don't get confused on which one is which. When I say the final chapter, part 4, you see the
Boom.
picture. I mean, you know exactly what it is.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
And then you had, again, like Creep Show, like
Yeah.
the comic book art.
Yeah.
These are just a couple of just stick in my head. Fright Night.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That picture of Amanda Bierce on the front with her jaw wide open, and
Yeah.
like Fright Night. I'll have to say, like I've always liked that movie. Like, I've loved that. It's a classic.
Absolutely.
But it was never one that really scared me. Like, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was cool, but it wasn't very scary, right?
And that's that time frame we're looking at right here, because kind of the same deal with Reanimator, Evil Dead 2. It had your kind of jump out moments, grossed you out a little bit, but it was about the roller coaster ride. It wasn't about going out and just totally terrifying you like The Exorcist, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's what made these movies the powerhouses that they were, man. Friday the 13th, all those. Freddy became, can't hear me, bon appetit, And, it became pop culture.
Exactly. Well, and that's what I'm saying, is that the cover for Fright Night is terrifying.
Yeah.
like you don't know what you're getting whenever you just look. You're like, ooh, that's... what's in that house? That's scary looking.
Hey.
And it's effective, and it made you pick up the box, and it made you take it home, and it made you watch the movie. And there's so many things like that are just a part of our history, a part of our lives, that was just because you had the video store.
Yeah.
You go down to the video store, and maybe your mom wants to rent Pretty Woman, but you go take a look through the horror thing, and you're like, hey, can we get Monster Squad 2? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. The Howling, man, the artwork for The Howling always has been one of my favorites. Yeah, I mean, just that, that image has always just been one of those. And of course, that's an age thing too, because you're at, I'm probably at 12 years old at that point, and to see that artwork. Wow, I mean, is it somebody in pain behind this screen? They're busting through the screen. That image has always been, to me, iconic. And so what about this? How about this one? How about movies that you always wanted to rent because of the artwork, but you never really did back in the day, and you finally catch up to it later on, and you're like, wow, what a piece of crap.
Yeah, there's a few of those. Like I said, well, a lot of these I caught on like HBO at some point though, because it wasn't, or on cable or Sci-Fi, or maybe not necessarily the original edits, but certain movies that like I was not a fan of Halloween 3.
Oh yeah.
I watched it. I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Completely forgot about it. Completely forgot about it. When we started Scary Dad, Scott and I started talking about Halloween 3, and he's describing scenes that I've seen but just couldn't like put together in my head.
Yeah.
And so then I went, and because I had a copy of it that I had never even, it was still in the cellophane, I went and popped it in and watched it and was like, this is Halloween 3? Like, I thought this was a whole other movie. Like, I've seen this, but I didn't realize that was that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's see, what's some like, because I only wrote down the good ones.
What else you got then? What else you got?
Amityville 3D was not a great movie, but the
cover art was fantastic. And you flipped it over on the back, and it had that creature coming up and like grabbing the guy's face with his claw. And it's like, I got to see this.
Yes. Then, yeah.
But that was the only scene worth seeing,
Yeah. Let's see. What was another one that was like didn't get around to watching? Well, I saw it later, but like Scanners.
Oh yeah.
Like with the
Michael
picture
Ironside,
of like freaking out. It's certainly an interesting looking movie that let's see, Hellraiser, that's just one of those that kind of, it's iconic, but I saw that pretty early on. Like I think Hellraiser came out in what, like 88, 89, something like that. So
Yep.
that was high school for me. So that was just on the pile with the rest of them.
Yeah.
I do remember it was not a rental, but a buddy of mine, I was in like 10th grade, 11th grade, and went to go hang out at his house, and there was a copy of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And hey, dude, the title says what it needs to say, right? A Rocky Horror Picture. Like, okay, we'll put that on. And it's like a transsexual musical, and both of us are sitting there like, we had actually, I think I was like I was 14 or 15 years old maybe. And we had actually, somehow, we had scored a 6-pack of Budweiser Tall Boys, and we were going to watch a horror movie. And we popped that in, and we got about 20 minutes into it, and we were both just like, what the hell is this? It's like, dude, I'm out. We're sitting there drinking beer and talking about girls, and then watching Tim Curry dance around in lingerie. Like, like this was, I was completely lied to, man.
So I remember the box for Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, and it drew me to want to watch it. And then after watching it, I'm like, yeah. At first I didn't like it, but over the years I'm like, okay, I get what it is, for the time. And of course I end up being a huge Bob Clark fan later on, when you get more of his work. But it's movies like that that box just stayed in your head. There was another one called Abomination as well that was really grotesque on the cover. And
I think I remember that one.
And not good movies, but the artwork just made you, have to check these things. Oh, City of the Living Dead, which back then was called Gates of Hell.
Okay, I remember that one.
And you had that skull with the eyes over the city, kind of hanging there. It's like eating the city or whatever. Oh man, that thing. You talking about something that got rented a lot. For the drill going through the dude's face and the girl, with the intestines coming out of her mouth. That's where I discovered Italian horror.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Italians just kick everything up a notch, don't they?
Yeah, that gore level, they were doing what we were talking about with Reanimator, how over the top the gore is, but they were doing it in 80 and 81. So they were just ahead of the curve. They're really, we just kind of caught up with them. But yeah, I mean, well, again, Zombie, Fulci's Zombie. I mean, that cover,
dude,
iconic.
Yeah, well, the movie itself the eyeball scene is what everybody knows.
Yeah,
dude, freaking zombie eating a shark.
Yeah, man. I mean,
Okay.
where
Okay,
else are
so
you gonna see that?
like you don't see that, and you got to think about again, it's not. We live in a litigious society that didn't exist back then. But you're telling your actor, your stuntman, whatever. It's like, that was a tiger shark. Okay, those things are notoriously dangerous animals, and that's a big shark.
Right.
And you're just like, hey, go swim over there to that thing and bite it. And see let's just see what happens. It's like,
just roll with it.
this is just pure insanity, and it's so great. But
What about you got any action flicks or something that you rented just because? I mean, I remember Invasion USA, man, when I saw the cover of Chuck with those guns. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Man,
Well, dude, that almost. It's funny because action flicks and cop shows from the 80s kind of almost influence my modern gun purchases.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not a real big gun guy, but I live in Texas and I got a few, right? So
yeah.
This is, 12, 13 years ago now. My brother-in-law comes over to my house one day. He's not my brother-in-law at the time. He's just a buddy of mine. He comes over. He'd been to a gun show. And he's like, hey, check this out. He opens up a box. Just bought a brand new gun. It's a Beretta. Looks like the Riggs' gun from Lethal Weapon.
Right.
Like, oh, sweet, that's awesome. So what Colin's MO is, he'll buy a weapon, he'll use it for a while, decide he wants something else, sell whatever he's got for like half of what he bought it for.
Right.
And so then I end up on the buying side of just collecting all kinds of cool stuff that I've eventually, like, I've rolled out. You know, I don't have a tremendous amount of stuff, but like I still have that Beretta, and it's kind of a pain in the ass because it's the old style, so it doesn't have, like, it's got a rounded barrel instead of a rail, so you can't put a light on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a functional weapon. Like, I'm not complaining about it. Like, but if you're like, oh, okay, you want to go tactical, like the zombie apocalypse. We're in the middle of the global pandemic. You're like, okay, I might want something that just has a few more bells and whistles.
Sure.
But I won't part with this thing. I've got a leather shoulder holster for it and everything. Like, I'm going full on like 80s, 90s on this thing. But like, dude, the action movies, yeah. Like,
action flicks, sci-fi flicks. I mean, I think about the cover of Runaway, Tom Selleck, Gene Simmons. Yeah, instant rental.
Escape from New York.
Oh yeah.
With the broken Statue of Liberty. Like, no, you can't do anything. Like, there's no way to make something more awesome than having a decapitated Statue of Liberty head just sitting in the middle of the street.
Right.
Of course, that's John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, so that's just a winning team anyway.
Yeah.
But even if it wasn't, you'd still rent that movie.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like,
Absolutely.
it's just
all the ninja flicks, Return of the Ninja, Ninja 3. I mean, Bloodsport. I mean, those images just pop in your head instantly when you just say the name.
Yes. And I was gonna ask you before you segued into action movies, because I mean, Die Hard. Have you seen the movies that made us?
Yeah.
Like the early reviews for Bruce Willis, not Die Hard, but Bruce Willis, before they recut a couple of scenes, and they hadn't even finished making the movie, but the early reviews were bad, so they cut him out of the poster,
right,
and put the building. He's the highest paid actor in Hollywood, and they remove him from the poster and replace him with a building because he's getting panned as an actor. I'm like, oh man, can you imagine? Like,
crazy.
Getting that payroll that he was getting for Die Hard. Like, okay, you're set for life. You never really have to work again, right?
Yeah.
You make one movie. It's like winning the lottery. You're just in, you're out, you do some TV, you just do whatever you need to do, but you're paid. And but then to be like, I think my career is over after this at the same time, because you gotta be not biting some nails, being like, please, 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 please. But yeah, there's so many good ones. And then again, I was gonna say, I think when you're talking about moving into the 90s, like, kind of where was the fall off? I think the fall off too came with a lot of maybe we can blame grunge. It's like the world kind of became a little bit more self-conscious and kind of more like, I don't know, because I was a teenager in the 90s and I was part of that scene. But I also remember when Scream came out, they were making fun of horror movies, and I was like, the only character in that whole movie I identified with was Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah.
Because he's like the video store clerk nerd that knows all the horror movies, and I'm like, I'm that guy.
Yeah. I know everything he just said.
Yeah, I know what he's talking about. So it's all and that's Wes Craven too. So I mean, Scream was not a bad movie, but it just kind of got to where it was more like self-aware,
but it kind of reshaped where it was heading from there. So I mean, it still delivered because it was really getting stale, and it was necessary, but it just seemed like the artwork for everything back then just got real simple. I mean, you can take the cover of, I don't know, the Skulls, and it's almost the same cover as Halloween 6 or 7 or whichever one you want to pick. It's the same format of the faces turned over their shoulder, looking back at the camera, and all that stuff.
Yeah, it seemed like it got lazy.
Yeah.
Like maybe they were like, hey, people will rent it regardless. You don't have to have as good of a hook.
Well, it's almost a thing of you didn't focus on it having a star. You focused on here's a group of people that you can possibly identify with because Scream did so well.
Yes, there was a lot of those ensemble horror movies, but I cracked a joke with I don't know which show I was on at the time. It's like had 80s horror that was like it's like a bull coming out of the chute at a rodeo. It's like blood and guts and cussing.
Yep.
And boobs.
And boobs. Yep.
Like
that's what
boom.
you had to have.
And it was a winning formula because I read an article that's talking about Friday the 13th, and it's like if they had a good opening weekend, they greenlit the next movie.
Yeah.
They didn't care what it was about. They didn't care about following the story. It's just like as soon as they released it, boom, people were in the theaters. Cool, make another one.
Yep.
And have it out within like a year. Like just let's make it happen. Whereas now everything's so like wrapped up in statistics and worried about like I'm sure that they were that was wrapped up in statistics, but at least a lot of these movies were fun. Directors were allowed to experiment. There was a lot of stuff that was just kind of maybe swept under the rug or kind of ignored because they're just like screw it. It makes money,
right.
Make it.
Which is really where I kind of checked out a lot of them, too. I mean, I know we're getting kind of off the subject, but usually when you get past the third movie or so in anything, it's really lost its way, and they're saying, we need to try something different. Well, no, you need to do what got you here.
Right.
Because they always end up running off, and it goes off to some far crazy, whacked-out thing, and then they always try to pull it back to the original story eventually,
Yeah, they try to reboot it.
Yeah, so it's just like you don't have to go that crazy with it. I mean, yeah, after the fifth Friday the 13th, I was insulted when it came out. I was. It's got some of the best kills in it ever of any.
I just watched that. I watched that not too long ago. Whenever I couldn't talk and I was home from work for a month before I was home from work from a month. I was home alone.
Like all the characters, I just don't like it not being Jason. It's just like, what's the point?
well, the point is, Part 4 had a great opening, and they said make another one, and they're
right,
like, well,
exactly.
Corey Feldman completely turned Jason's face into his entire skull into hamburger. So what are we supposed to do? They're like, we don't care.
You jump straight to Part 6 is what you do.
well, and it's like, imagine yourself as a screenwriter, right? You're a screenwriter, and you're like, you get an order. It's like you get a phone call.
Right.
It's like, yo, I'm the honcho at Paramount, and you're making our next Friday the 13th movie. Kill as many people as you want, have as much boobs as you want. You've only got 2 rules. I need it out by summer, and Jason Voorhees is dead. Click. And you're like,
exactly. It's kind of like
okay.
It's kind of like picking on the guys that are the substitute guys in Kiss, right? Oh,
right.
they're just pretenders. Yeah, but if you were off the job, wouldn't you do it?
Right. Yeah. So of course you would take that job. So it's like you're a screenwriter. You're like, okay, not Jason, but looks like Jason. They're like, go with it.
But it's just sometimes it's it's kind of like Scream 2. I'm the mom of the killer from the first movie, and this is just some random guy that wanted to help me kill people. Oh, yeah. Okay, so, sit down before you fall down.
Well, like I said, there's a special place in my heart for Friday the 13th 5 because of the video store.
Sure,
the video store experience.
Hey, it made me rent it.
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny to me is because you and I were at the same Frightmare with the Jason reunion for the Friday the 13th.
Yeah, and
I felt bad, dude, because Tom Morsha was not getting as much love as everybody else, and I'm like, dude, I'm a fan of Part 5. It's not my favorite by far, but I'm certainly not gonna harsh on the stunt man who played fake Jason in a few scenes, Like, yeah, no, you're part of the series, so you're on the mask.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. And I get that. It's not his. Hey, he got the gig,
yeah.
So.
Well, I think because I'm looking at my timer,
Yeah.
and we wanted to keep these things to about 45 minutes, and we're at about 50.
We blew that.
And I've got to add some sound effects, so hey, that's what this thing turns into. So, but you got any final thoughts on the video store other than asking them to please come back because we need them?
It was the best time for me. I mean, I spent a lot of time. It was like, what kids have access to now with the internet is kind of like what the video store was for us back in the day. And you only had an image to go by. Again, I always reference it to being a Kiss fan and growing up, and you only saw pictures of Kiss. You never actually got to see them perform live, so you imagined what it was you were going to be seeing. Well, these boxes for VHS, that's exactly what this was. You would flip it over, see 2 or 3 shots. You'd see on the back of Ghoulies, you'd see the guy with the real long tongue wrapping his tongue around a dude's neck, and you're like, oh my God, I got to see that. And then you go,
I gotta know what happened in here.
Oh man, the sword and the sorcerer. When you got the big, it's Richard Mole standing up there over the top of him. He's got the 3-bladed sword on the cover. You got to rent that crap, man.
Well, even a movie like Kroll.
Oh, Kroll was
like that.
Fantastic. Yes.
The movie was like really dark and really long, and as a kid, it was really confusing. But you had to watch it because of that. The glaive.
Yeah. The glaive and the again, the artwork, the cover of it. You're sucked in. Hey, it's a princess, a dude, he's got the glaive and that creature in the background. I'm sold.
Done. I'm in.
Yeah.
I'll watch this right now. Well, awesome, man. Well, I think that does it for the video store. I'm looking at the clock. It's about 9:15, so this is where we have to lock the doors of the video store, go to the back room, and throw up a movie on the big screen. So what do you think you're watching tonight?
A little Amber Lynn, whatever it is.
Yeah, I gotta say that those performers must be hurting from this whole social distancing thing.
Yeah, true.
They're all like, well, awesome, man. Well, let's close this one down, and we will see you next week.
Adios.